Man, I like, you know what I like? I like scheduling these shows, man. I like the schedule. I like it because on the screen, it'll be like, it's like a countdown. You're like 10, 9, 8, 3, 2, 1, and then it'll flash it's showtime. And then I'm supposed to click record. I like that. All right, we got a conversation we're going to talk about today. Oh, Nelly. We got a conversation we're going to get into today, man. We're going to have a great conversation today. I'm excited. I'm going to probably surprise some folks today. But we have a great conversation today. I'm looking forward to it. We're going to jump in, man. We got a lot to talk about. This is going to be one of them ones, I think. So I could be wrong. Who knows? I mean, you guys have to determine that. You decide if it's one of them ones. But we're going to talk today. We getting ready to have a conversation. So if you got your popcorn, whatever you need, get it. And if those of you who are followers of the channel and are always like, man, we like the longer videos, this one of them ones. This ain't no in 8 minutes video. We're going to talk, all right? We're going to talk. We're going to talk about the wonderful irony of Voddie Baucham. And I'm looking forward to it, man. I've been looking, it's been a while since I've actually been looking forward to doing one of these talks. But today I'm looking forward to it. There's some things that we're going to talk about that I think will be beneficial. And I think I'm going to reveal some things that, at least as it relates to me and who I am and how I see these things, Voddie Baucham and all these people, I think it's going to all come out today. We're going to let it all hang out today. And I'm excited for this. I've been waiting to do this talk. But first things first, welcome to CNN. I'm the underdog, Kirk Kennedy. Let's go win, right? I'm the underdog. On this channel, we take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. This has made people mad at me. I'm a coward to some. I'm trying to be impartial for the... No, I just believe it's darkness on all sides. I'm actually brave enough to expose it, all right? If you are of the Christian tradition, such as I am, if you are a follower of the way, a believer in Jesus Christ, then you want to, Jesus told us in Matthew 6 that tomorrow's not promised, but the day of the Lord is the future is promised. So you want to remember the day of the Lord. Look at that ashy knuckle right there, right there, right there, all right? And we are on a road to 5K. The Lord is dealing with me. He's helping me, dealing with me. I watch people's channels. I watched the dude. I've been following this dude who talks about Caitlin Clark and them. His channel was at like 2.2 like 4 weeks ago. I just been watching because I was like, all right, I like to talk about Caitlin Clark too. That Bama's channel was like at 11.7 followers. And I'm still at 33. But I don't mind it. Let's get it. We on the road to 5K. Hopefully by December 31st, we get to 5K. Let's get it. All right. We are getting ready to have a conversation. I'm going to say a lot today. So this is definitely going to be an hour video. I mean, I'd be shocked. Maybe not. I would be shocked if it wasn't an hour video. So buckle up. Get your asbestos caps and all of it. All right. The title of this video is called The Wonderful Irony of Voddie Baucham. And by the time you're going to say this, it sounds like I'm going to have a problem with him. I'm actually, on one level, I'm actually not. In fact, I'm actually excited, and let me tell you why. So, Voddie dropped a new book last week on June 4th during Pride Month. Shouts to him on that. Called "It's Not Like Being Black." All right, let me give you a graphic. I think everyone should. Do I got the graphic? Where is the graphic? I need the graphic. All right, I think this is the graphic. I'm getting ready to show y'all the graphic. I think everyone. Every believer, at least, I don't know, every believer who wants to know about sort of the sexual acronym community and sort of how they got the prominence, I think needs to read this book. I'm excited about this book. And that's probably going to surprise people because I'll tell you why in a second. This is the book. It's Not Like Being Black, How Sexual Activists Hijacked the Civil Rights Movement. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm excited about this book, but partly for some reasons that are going to catch you off guard. All right. So stay with me to the end. You'll see what I mean. I always come from a different angle. This is who I am. But I am excited for a couple reasons, right? Let me say this too. I think some people think, I didn't agree with certain things in fault lines. And it wasn't because I'm pro CRT or pro woke as people define it in terms of, I didn't agree with it because I thought a lot of it was, a lot of it was, a lot of people have said this. It was, I think it was somewhat not as good penmanship. I think that some of the study misrepresented, all that type of stuff, right? And I just thought I thought Voddie in conversation accuses the left of things that fault lines did. Like one example is to say that the left uses narrative to push their agenda. Like, so almost like if a person says, police brutality, I struggle with police brutality, and they give it, that's a leftist agenda. But then Voddie highlighted in his fault lines book, you don't know who I am until you hear my story. Like, we're created by stories. Like, the gospel is a story, right? We remember the story of Jesus's life. Like, narrative is fundamental to being a human being. Once you strip people of having a narrative, you essentially strip them of having a identity, because none of us are laws, and none of us are just laws. We're stories. We're our lives intertwined with the world. And I thought there was stuff like that I thought, but that was fault lines. But I debated him some years ago. I think he has a lot of good things to say, man. I think this is the world we live in today. This is why people always say, I don't always agree with everything you say. Like, anyone agrees with anything everyone says. But people act like if you disagree with something someone says, or a portion of it, that it's so sad, because in the streets, we would call these people D-riders, right? Like, what do you, stop, okay, if I don't like it, I don't like it. Doesn't mean that I'm hating, right? That's common sense. If I don't like it, I don't like it. That don't mean that I'm hating. There were things I disagree with in the way things were presented, and people act like, oh, you're just mad at the dude. I have no problem with it. I respect the dude, and I'm grateful for him. I'm grateful for his voice in many ways. And this book is one of the reasons why I'm excited. This book in particular, let me tell you why I'm excited about this book, and why I think, again, I haven't read it, but let me tell you why I'm excited about it. Because I know I watched a couple of his interviews about the book, and I'm in lockstep with him. In 2018, I did a album called The Appendix. And on that album, I had a song. My lead single was called Gay is the New Black. Ironically, I did not put that on YouTube, because back then I wasn't really doing YouTube. And a lot of my videos were popping on Facebook. I put them on Facebook, and I was that was where I was at. Now, I don't really, as y'all saw my video a couple days ago, I don't really bang with Facebook anymore. They just be wilding. I'm more YouTube now. So I'm going to actually upload that video, Gay is the New Black, tonight, and let you all know that it's up. But in that video, I basically was going after the concept, Gay is the New Black, I felt like was a slap in the face to Black people. And it was, and then on my album Philosophy, Philosophy, I talked about this book called After the Ball Drops that was written in 1989. That was basically the agenda of the G of the of that acronym community. They just laid out how they're going to change people's minds about this issue, and it worked masterfully. So I've been talking about this issue, about how they hijacked as Voddie says in his tagline, how sexual activists hijacked the civil rights movement, right? I 100% stand by, and I watched a couple of his interviews, and this is stuff I've been on. So I don't think I'm going to read the book personally, because a lot of what he talked about, I put in my music 5 and 6 years ago. You go on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get music, and look up The Appendix by Kirk Kennedy, and you will see I did a whole album laying out how slavery, racism, how these views of Black people got put out there today, right? So, I appreciate what he's saying in this book, and I think that a lot of believers, I think, aren't really hip, man. And I think this is what Voddie does do that I appreciate. I think he works hard, even if you don't like how he presents it, or the way sometimes I think, some of the information could have been more thoughtful, or at least more accurate. He wants to make sure that the church, the believers, are hip to what's going on. And I think this is an issue that for many believers is so overwhelming and so scary that they just so in photography, right, we have this term called pray and spray, where you're just like shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting, and you hope when you get home you have a couple of good shots. It's like, no, compose your shot, understand your setting, know where the lighting is, all of that, and get a good shot. Get a composition, get a good shot. Portrait, landscape, do all of that, right? A lot of Christians are praying and spraying, just hoping that like this thing will just go away, that Jesus will come back before. And while the whole time, the enemy's just lurking and moving and moving and moving and moving and growing. So what I'm excited about Voddie's book is I think he does a great job detailing that. And a lot of the information that he said in interviews, I just been hip to for some years. So I was like, man, that's what's up. Because my album obviously is not going to have, or the song is not going to have the reach that this book will. I think this is a book that the church needs to get. And I don't know what it's going to say fully because I'm not going to read it because I feel like what he said, I'm already hip to. But I think if he's talking about in the interviews, what he's talking about in his book, I think believers should get this book. I don't know how many books are going to be out there that explain this, sort of the background that I think he's giving. But I from what I heard in the interviews, I stand by it. All right. I think you should get the book. And I'm not surprised at some people because I debated them or I might disagree with something on fault lines. People just don't know how to have nuance. And they're so pressed to call you out of your character because you don't stand on the values that they stand on. You don't die on the hills they die on. And I just think they think you're a coward because you're not. And I just think that's not my problem. That's not my issue. But there's something about this book. But there's another reason why I think this book, it's wonderfully ironic. And that's the real issue for me. Like, I think there's good information. I think he's going to tell you things that you don't know about the sexual acronym community that are going to help you understand the movement. But there was a wonderfully ironic reason why I like this. But before I get to that point, I think it's important to make this distinction for those of you, because many of you, I'm encouraged by, you hear me say things, you like some of the views that I have. There's always, I don't agree with everything, that's fine. All that's true. But there's some reasons that I think I want to lay out why I feel like my perspective is different. From the beginning, I've always had what I call stay balanced. And a lot of it comes from this verse, right? A lot of it, the foundation of me staying balanced. And by that, I mean in all things, but I was applying it initially to the political realm. Like, I'm not on the left or the right. I think they both are wilding. I think they both are. And I think neither of them, if you criticize either of them, they get offended. Whoever supports that side automatically assumes you're on the other side. And that's just so fascinating. Can you imagine if every time you critiqued or disciplined your children, they thought that you love kids, you only love kids that don't do what you just corrected them for? Or imagine if you shared a thought with your wife, a concern that you had, and she said, I want a divorce because you only care about people who don't do what I did. It would just be dumb, right? It would be the dumb. But that's what happens. And this is how I know it's the enemy. And all these people that think they're so mature, they're such tough guys because they think they're anti-woke or anti-white supremacy. And yet their character is the opposite of what God requires. It's fascinating to me to watch this play out. I see it all the time, and I get called it from both sides, but I'm just a gangster. I'm an ex-gangster from the street. That's what doesn't bother me. Although it can tempt me because I'm still a street dude, and every once in a while, that street dude that I have locked in the basement wants to come out and really be like, man, where you live at, fam? Drop me. Don't talk to me. I'll drive out there. Let's talk face to face. But that's just not realistic, right? So let me give you a couple reasons why it's important what we're going to say tonight. And let me explain to you where I'm really coming from, because I don't think people really understand that. They get offended because they think. So here's the difference. Let me tell you what the main difference is between myself and most of the left and the right, because I don't bang with either of them. I'm centrist. I just think I see deeds of darkness on all sides, and I'm not afraid to call it out. And whenever you call it out, boy, if you say something about the right to the right, man, they will attack you as if like you're woke, you have bad theology, you're a coward, you're this and that. And it's like, okay, cool. Thanks for letting me know. You know what I'm saying? Glad my kids love me. Like, who are you, fam? That's just how I feel sometimes. Like, okay, who are you? You didn't have to watch the channel. Don't watch it. Unsubscribe. I'll live. I'll be okay. But they say that. But let me tell you where I'm different from most of the right or the left, right? Because I think the left is the same way to be wilding. If you don't think white supremacy and racism is going to be wilding. So here's where I'm different. Number one, I'm not theotical. And what I mean by that is this. I'm describing theotical versus theological. Theological is what the Bible actually says. Theotical is taking my political convictions and treating them as if they're biblical commands. And I don't think many people, if you ask people, what verse do you get from to think that way? They'll say something like the Noahic covenant or something crazy like, oh, because God made them in the womb. There are no verses that tell you specifically to go to clinics where women feel like it's their body, their choice. There's not, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I think it's good. I got brothers who go to those things and try to preach, and I'm grateful for them. But people act like, you know what's funny? The term virtue signaling was used on both sides. Like, people called the left virtue signaling if they talked about racism and felt like, well, I stand up for that. But the right did the same thing. It was like, it was like, hey, okay, who cares how many police kill people in the streets? Look how many babies. And it was almost like, but the Bible doesn't tell us hey, wherever the greatest sin occurs is what you should care about. It's like, listen, you care about all of it. Some people will care about most of the people that care about the clinics where women who feel like it's their body, their choice. Most of the people that care about that, I don't ever hear talking about feeding the poor and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, that's your thing. But what we did was we made it like, oh, you need, if you care about that, but then this is happening, as if God is sovereign over all of that too, right? It's not like God is only sovereign over the stuff you agree with. He's sovereign over the people that you don't like, all of it, right? So I'm not theological. I fight to not let my political views go against the character that God requires. You know, and I think I think everyone would say that, but man, people just be wilding. Like, I'm not quick to call you a name because you just disagree with me. It's just like that. And I think people think that what God is after are tough guys or tough women who go after the opposing political party. Yet Jesus said when they were killing him, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, right? Jesus, when they hit him in the face, he was like, look, I spoke openly to you all the time. Like, if I said something wrong, then tell me. But if not, why did you hit me? But yet we got these people, and I did a video before. I think more people who are if you're willing to sin against your brother because they disagree with you, then I think you want Barabbas and not Jesus. You want a zealot who's going to attack the opposing political party and not a God, a savior who actually will command you to pray for him. I don't ever see these dudes say that. But boy, will they attack you quickly. When your character goes beyond, when your cause determines your character, I think you're theological, especially when it's political. You should never let your cause, I don't care if it's racism, abortion, if it's healthcare, welfare system, whatever it is, you are capable, if you are a believer, of living in the fruits of the Spirit, of submitting to the categories of love in 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 8a. If you're telling people they're cowards because they're not standing, then you are insisting on your own way. What verse tells people to do that? That's what theological is. Theological says, what does God's word actually say? Theological is, what's the political opposition I need to be against? I'm just not theological. And I'll flesh that out a little bit more. The other thing that separates me from the left and the right mostly is that my view of slavery in America is Luke 10, 27. It's Romans 1, 18 through 32, and it's Ephesians 6, 12. I don't think people's view on the left or the right is really rooted in biblical. Like, I think people, because we're theological, they're so on both sides, everyone thinks the greatest harm is the opposing political party. And so that's what it's about. Like, who cares about, well, anyway, I'll come back to that. So I think because people are so fired up about not letting people destroy the country, all this stuff. And I think there is this understanding, I watched in Voddie Baucham's 2 interviews today that I watched. They were good interviews. I love the way Voddie Baucham talks. He's a good speaker. I like imitating him. Well, I feel like that there is a sentence to this, and when you're dealing with this, there's a structure and all that. I like the way Voddie talks. I like the way he talks. I wish I could talk like that, right? So in both the interviews, though, there's this sense from the conservative side. I don't watch a lot of the left because I think the left sometimes is such low-hanging fruit. Sometimes I can't listen to the people on the left talk long. I just think like it's so crazy to me. Like I don't even feel like watching anymore of this. But the conservative side, there's really this narrative that the country is much more immoral, that it's lost its Judeo-Christian values. And they would attribute that to the political agenda of the left. And that's what they attribute it to. So when they talk about, so when slavery and things come up, many of them will to some degree acknowledge that it was wrong to do it, but they will often talk about slavery like they were men of their times, and they were Christians just trying to find their way. And I think that's interesting, because I'm a man of the times that I live in, but yet if I support a woman's right to choose, or if I support the sexual acronym community and being married and stuff, why wouldn't I be a man of my times? Because that's what's happening in the times today. It's not like there weren't people that were opposing that back then. That language is so crazy to me and a lot of people. And I realize that my view of slavery in America is just different. I don't view racism and slavery the way others do. Let me explain what I mean. So one of the verses that I think about racism and slavery is Luke 10:27, right? So this is the parable of the Good Samaritan. And one of the scribes walked up and asked Jesus, what was he do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus says to him, well, what do the scriptures say? How do you read it? I love that question. You should always ask yourself, how do you read this? When Jesus said that, he didn't answer it. He said, well, what is in the scriptures? How do you read the scriptures? How do you interpret them? And this is what the guy said. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus said, yep, you're right. That's it. That's how, and Jesus said, look, that's it. Do that and you will live. Right. And then he goes into why, who's my neighbor and all that stuff. When I process slavery and racism in America, I process it beginning with this lens right here. I start here. I don't look at, because when you talk about slavery, for some reason, particularly conservative Christians, and some of them white, but usually conservative Christians, they tend to think like it wasn't that big of a deal, that it was, you were a man of your times. And they think, and they even change it. Like you'll hear stuff like this. Well, technically, race is a social construct. So racism doesn't exist because it's a social construct. And they'll go that angle. It's like, fam, even if race is a social construct, the sin that people did to people based on their skin color was very real. Our history is replete with examples of it. So you get these kind of, I think they're unintelligent conversations. I think people are really just not thinking clearly when you say that. You think, oh, it's partiality. No, racism, slavery was not partiality. And even if there's no such thing as race, because there's only one race, the human race, it doesn't take away the crimes done to those people. What it was this. Here's what American history is replete with. This is, I think, God's perspective. You didn't love your neighbor as yourself, right? I think what slavery was replete with a decimation of the second greatest commandment. You call it whatever you want. Race doesn't exist. There's only it's partiality. You decimated. You cannot tell me that slavery in most cases was I'm loving my neighbor as myself. You were not. It was not. It was rape. It was murder. It was creating orphans. It was brutality against people. And these were people who were Christians. And then you had pastors who were teaching that this was biblical. So you get this idea of slavery, to me, is nothing about, it's about refusing to love your neighbor as yourself. And I don't think God is pleased with that. The second thing that I think where I'm a little bit different in my view is, I think this is part of my view. 1 Timothy 6 is where I go also. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. People will say, like, I remember when the New York Times and these people came out with the 1619 Project. And then, obviously, to combat that, the conservatives came out with the 1776 Project. The 1619 Project was basically saying slavery is America's original sin, and ever since 1619, America did this and this. And then you had people say, well, technically, America wasn't a nation until 1776, so America can't be held accountable for those 257 years that it was, because those were just colonies. That stuff is just dumb to me. I can't wait till the Lord is like, what were we doing? What were y'all talking about? those colonies became America. They were connected, right? It wasn't like they weren't unified, but they were unified in their sinfulness, right? So I think what's happened is America's greatest sin is not slavery and it's not racism. It's the love of money. When you listen, it wasn't about we just want to create an economic reality. It was we tried to take these white people who came with us and make them indentured servants. They couldn't handle it. We tried to go after the people who were there. I don't know what they call today, like indigenous people group. I don't want to call them Native American. They might not like it. I don't know. You couldn't go after those people. We used to call them Indians. We don't call them that anymore. You couldn't go after them because they were crafty and they'd kill you, or they died off easily because they caught diseases from the Europeans. So then you go to the transatlantic slave trade. It's cheaper labor, and then you can own these people for life. That was about the love of money. It was the love of money. And what happens is the way they justified it was, well, we're building something for God. We're building an empire. And as industrialism and as these different things happened and America grows, you start believing, see, God is with us. But the Roman Empire was a greater entity, that was a greater world power than America was. And God wasn't with them. So it's almost like, fam, this manifest destiny is a lie. The real issue is it's a love of money. You love money so much that you're willing to brutalize other human beings. And even I was reading something about Whitfield, Wesley, and Edwards today, which I'll make reference at before this video is over. And it was talking about their logic of converting slaves was you got to convert them, but you didn't have to free them. So you have in bondage people, and it's not like they're just slaves. It wasn't indentured servitude. I think conservatives act like slavery was indentured servitude or something. Like people just, like a kid who's told you got to clean up your room from your mom and you don't feel like doing it. Like that's what slavery was. No, it was a brutality against the second greatest commandment, and it was rooted in the love of money. It was a love of money. America is a country. Adam Locke, right? Adam Locke wrote the manifesto for America to flourish in what we call capitalism, and that is the excess of money, the ability to make money without any impediment. Government, no one can stop you. It's corporate, private industry, corporate capitalism. We make money, we move the country, all of that, right? And I think it begat greed. And so you had people who would sin against other people in brutal ways. I mean, listen, people say stuff like this. This is what the conservatives always say. Well, what was the Civil War? What was that? Like we lost hundreds of thousands of people and gave our lives. Wasn't that good enough? Didn't that prove that? Yeah, but then you had almost 100 years of Jim Crow. You had 100 years of punishing black people after the Civil War for what? It was economic sanctions is what it was. What was that? It was the lack of ability for you to get money and get resources to your community as a punishment for being freed in the Civil War. It was about money. Jim Crow was about money. A lot of these laws until the Civil Rights era were about impeding black people from getting money, right? Why? Because you love money. You love money. So biblically, when I think about all this stuff, I don't get into these political quotes, well, racism is this, and it was the political left and the Democrats were the real racists. Man, I think it was a love of money, and I think God is not pleased by that. The other, and with that, just being different from people, then I have Ephesians 6. For we do not wrestle with flesh and blood against flesh and blood, but against the rulers and against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. You know, whenever I hear people talk about racism and slavery and all the stuff that people have been talking about, right? Voddie Baucham on down. Is always talked about from a human to human perspective. We always talk about, like even now, it's always about the left. This is what I mean about being theotical. We don't even have the discernment to even figure out like how is what Paul said, we do not wrestle with flesh and blood, right? All we do is wrestle with flesh and blood. Everything is the left's fault or the right's fault, or this group of people, or this group of people, or it's the black community's fault, or it's the criminal justice system, or it's that. But the biblical perspective is we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. Like this is spiritual warfare. All of these things are spiritual warfare. And I think not thinking about that a lot and thinking about people in terms of just human terms has done significant damage to America and to the church. I think it's just done significant damage because we think of We think of the world based through theological, political lenses. That it was this policy, it was this group of people, it was Joe Biden and them that said this, it was Trump that did this, and we missed the point that we do not wrestle with flesh and blood. I watched in the two interviews of Voddie today. It's always about the left, and the even the topic is the sexual activists hijack. Yes, but these people, it's deeper than that, and we don't even I feel like we don't. And I could be wrong. I'm sure I'm wrong in many ways. We don't process it through. I process all of this through this lens. I do not think about the world the way a lot of these people do, and then they get offended at me, but I have biblical reasons why. I don't hear people lay out biblical reasons why they do it. I'm giving you some of the biblical thinking, why I say the things that I say, why I'm not afraid to say the things that I say, why I sat with Voddie and Tim 2 years ago and debated them and was good with what I said. Because I'm not competing with them. I'm challenging some ideas because I think they're not even biblical enough. They're not biblical enough. It's always the left. It's always the right. It's always the white person or the black people. It's always the leftist agenda or the right wing machine. It's always legacy media. It's always this. Where's the devil at? Where is the spiritual warfare at? That's one of the reasons why I see it differently. And also Romans 1. I see it through the lens of Romans 1. I think that this is what I honestly believe. I'm not going to read up. We know what Romans 1:18, for the wrath of God is revealed against all ungodliness and unrighteousness, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. We know that there was a context and Paul was writing. He wasn't writing about America. But again, as we do with all the scriptures, we try to think, okay, the Bible is written to them, but it's also for us. How do we think about this in our modern context? I think slavery, racism, all that stuff was a suppression of the truth. And so what does God do when you suppress the truth? I'm not going to read the whole passage, but he gives people over, right? God will give people over to their sinfulness. Now, in this context, he was talking about giving people over to a sexuality that displeases him, that belongs to their flesh. God will pull back his grace and let people go further than what they should do because they suppress the truth. Let me tell you where I'm different than a lot of these guys. What I think is happening in America, I don't think it's the left versus the right. I don't think America is a more evil place than 150 years ago because of leftist policies, because of the sexual acronym community, because of Alfred Kinsey and their movement, because of all these things, which I think there's some truth in that in terms of humanly speaking, but that's not the way I look at it. The way I think the country is being worse, if we call it worse, I think it's God's judgment against America for using the Bible, for Christians using his word to justify the brutalities of something like slavery, and then acting as if you can do that. And then after you go to war and stop the practice, you justify brutality against those people who are just trying to live. You go to their communities, you kill them, you burn down their houses, you pass laws to stop them, and you justify it in the Bible. You have theologians that you stand by, R.L. Dabney and different prejudice, evil theologians that you stand by. You wouldn't do that for the Jews in the Holocaust, though. I got a book right here on this shelf that talks about the theologians under Hitler. Nobody wants to support them, but you do that. You think that God doesn't care. And so I think America is not where it is because of the left. I think it's because God is like, how dare you take my word, what I died on the cross for, use it to subjugate people with evil, then downplay that subjugation, blame folks for that, cause more havoc, and then try to act like the people who did those things were simply men of their times. We've been suppressing the truth of the second greatest commandment since America, almost since America started, and you think the Lord does not care? Do you honestly think that the God who's in the Bible, that God, is so pleased because America eventually stopped slavery? You think the God of the Bible doesn't care about all of the sin against people and then using the Bible to... I got a book on this side over here called Sacred Scripture, Sacred War. And this book goes at all of these sermons that were used to inspire what we call the American Revolution. They twisted God's word to make average men feel like they got to go out and fight against the Brits because they wanted to secede from them as a nation. No taxation without representation. And an event, I got sermons in there. But yet, when it came to, they were like, the king was a tyrant. In fact, when you get a chance, go look at the Declaration of Independence. Go look at it, right? We highlight it as this great document because of all, sure. But do you know the majority of it, at least the second half of it, is all about the King of England and trying to build a nation that's different than what happened in England. And it's all about being entitled and under the tyranny of the King of England, right? That's the thing. And then people say, well, oh, but you did. And then, but at the same time, you had black people under you. You were the tyrant to a whole generations of people, right? You think God doesn't care about that, that God is just chilling. Jesus said that the Ninevites would rise up and judge this generation. We may think, man, slavery was a long time ago. It happened a long time ago. God thinks, oh, that happened, and we're gonna say something about it. We're gonna say something about it, right? I think what's happening in America has nothing to do with the political left or the right. I don't think Trump is the cause of none of it. I don't think Biden is either. I don't think it's none of that. I don't think it's that. I think the Lord is like, how dare you claim to be a Christian nation, and you act in ways that are not Christian, and you have for generations taught people that they can still think they're holy and have this hatred in their hearts. 1 John 4:20, God said this. This is God's word, not the declaration, not the people who are saying, oh, they were a man of their times. Man, you can take that man of your times and put it in your face and choke on it because it's not biblical. You know what? Here's what God says. If you say that you love your brother, if you do not love your brother whom you have seen, then you cannot love God whom you haven't seen. Are you telling me that American history is replete with people loving their brothers? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. And I think if people think God's not going to do nothing about it, look at how the country's grown. Well, look what Rome was. Look at what Greece was. Look at what Genghis Khan had. There's always been a world power. That has nothing to do with God's being impressed with these people. America has decimated the second greatest commandment. And I think we're living in the throes of. I think this is a Romans 1 society we're living in. This isn't the sexual acronym community. God is allowing the devil to say, look, have at it. Have at it. Go ahead and do what you want. Do what you do. Have at this nation. Have at this nation. Because there are genuine believers here, there's still mercy. I'm not saying there are no genuine believers here. There have been people. There have been, even in all that wickedness, people have gotten genuinely saved and loved the Lord. That's true. But there were a lot of people who taught that, and accepted this as true. Have you ever seen a picture where people would be gathered outside of their church? It'd be picture, all these white people in this picture, they're coming from church, and behind them is a black person hanging from a tree. Now, some people are watching this and thinking I'm woke. I'm making a much deeper point than that. But if you think I'm woke, that's exactly what I mean. And I'm going to expose why. This is why I love Voddie did in his book. I'm going to show you the irony of that in just a second. For those of you right now that are thinking I'm woke and just shaking your head, I'm saying this not in an angry heart. But if you think I'm woke by what I'm saying right now, I think you're a fool. And I'm saying it not with the anger in my heart that Matthew 5 warns against. If you say, Rocka, you fool, I'm not angry, but I think you're a fool in the proverb sense. You don't get what I'm saying. And because you're so theological, you can't handle it. But I'm going to show you in a couple minutes what I'm saying about Voddie's book to prove my point. I don't look at America as a country that's gotten worse because of political policies or agendas. I look at America as a country that has sinned against the second greatest commandment because of the love of money that we call capitalism. Using the Bible to do so has led God to let the enemy run rampant. So the enemy is just having a field day. He's loving it. That's the difference between me and a lot of these people. Because when they talk about all this stuff, and I don't know what Voddie's going to say in his book. Maybe he has this. But in the interviews, it was the same stuff. It's always the left. It's always the agenda of people. And I'm going to tell you why that's dangerous. Let me tell you, here's the third thing that makes me a little bit different from a lot of these people. Because my primary biblical lens and how I view unbelievers is largely 1 Corinthians 5, 2 Timothy 2:26. There's some others. But in 1 Corinthians 5, Paul is writing and saying that he had heard from Chloe's people in chapter 1, verse 10, 110. Chloe's people got to Paul and was telling him. So 1 Corinthians is a mix between what Paul heard was going on in the church from Chloe's people and questions that they had asked about things that Paul's answering. That was what Corinthians is about. So sometimes he'll be like this, as to the matter in which you wrote, or that he's addressing what they wrote about, right? But then sometimes he's addressing what he heard about. And so in 1 Corinthians 5, Paul hears that a man is sleeping with his father's wife. And he says that you're tolerating sin that even unbelievers wouldn't tolerate. Like, you're outraging even them by this sin. What is wrong? And you're okay with it. What is wrong with you? He's saying you got to deal with that. And he said this, that when I said don't have anything to do with those who are sexually immoral, swindlers, and greedy, he said I didn't mean the world, right? Because then you'd have to go out of the world. He said I meant those who profess to be believers. And then he says this, and that's 1 Corinthians 5. Just look at it on your own time. But he says this in verses 12 and 13. He says, for what have I to do with judging outsiders? Is it not those inside the church whom you are to judge, right? He says, God judges those outside, purge the evil from among you. Here's what Paul's getting at. These, of course, they're unbelievers. I'm not judging. I'm not even tripping off of them because they belong. I'll show you this. They belong to the devil. They're going to sin against the Lord. They're going to be evil. Taylor Swift is going to do stuff at her concerts. Beyonce is going to do stuff at her concerts. Your political opposition, Joe Biden's son, is going to do evil stuff. Trump is going, because these people don't belong to God. So he's like, look, I'm not even tripping off of them. I purge the evil from among you. So when I look at the world, I look at them. They're not the enemy to me. They're the field. They're the mission field. They're not the marauders. I looked at them as like, of course I expect you to do that. And let me give you another proof. Here, 2 Timothy 2, beginning of verse 22 through 26. It's classic, but we're just going to look at verse 26. All right. It says this. It's talking about in verse 25. It says, and the man of God should be patient and kind in preaching the gospel. I'm paraphrasing. And he says, and they, talking to unbelievers, may come to their senses and escape from the snare of the devil after being captured by him to do his will. So here's what God is saying. These unbelievers that people will sit around and make videos about and talk about how terrible they are and how much they're ruining the country. Biblically speaking, in the spiritual world, in the Ephesians 6 world, and not wrestling, they've been captured by the devil to do his will. These people have greater problems than they want to let women have their own way and take the lives of the babies that are in them. They have way more problems than that. That's a surface level reality. Yes, it's wild and it happens and God is sovereign over it too, but it's surface. These people they've been taken captured. That's why Jesus constantly had compassion. Remember in Jonah? Jonah, I think, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm not, is the only book in the Old Testament that is really evangelistic, where God tells Jonah to go to the Ninevites. It's modern day Iraq, right? And Jonah doesn't want to go. We know the story. So Jonah goes and here's the gospel message that Jonah preached. Nineveh will be destroyed in 40 days. And he just keep deuces and he's out. And then he goes to sit down and watch. And then that was all it took. Nineveh will be destroyed in 40 days. And all those people repented. So they were in sackcloth and ashes. And Jonah is blown. And God says, do you think I would not care about those 140,000 people? And that's how he ends. The book of Jonah ends with this statement by God. You think I wouldn't, I'm paraphrasing, but you think I don't care about that 140,000 people and all the cattle? Like I don't care about these people? Today, believers, especially, well, I think the left and the right do this, but because Voddie's a conservative, we're talking about the conservatives right now. I think the conservatives act like God doesn't care about these people. Sure, the Bible talks about God mocks the scoffer and there's going to be judgment. Sure, that happens. But God also shows he cares about the people. I mean, for goodness sake, he sent his son to die on the cross. He asked the Father to forgive the people who were killing him. He healed people, the Roman centurion. So he did. This is why people wanted Barabbas. We don't want a God who wants to pray for, who will die for people. We want a God who will make people die. And that's why people loved it. That's why a lot of believers think they're so mature, because you're such a tough guy, because you're anti-woke or you're anti-white supremacy or you're such a tough guy. You're so tough, but yet you lack the compassion, the character, the humility of what God is after. I'm not talking that we can be passionate. I'm passionate right now. There's a place for that. But when you're insulting people, I mean, you just be insulting people. And this is like, wow, because I disagree with what Tim said on the song, you insult me? Because I disagree with this, I disagree with that. Because I voted for Trump, now I'm a white supremacist? Because I am a conservative, like somehow I just hate people? Really? You just insult people and you think you're such a tough guy. And I think many people are going to stand before God and be like, you were loveless. You didn't love your fellow brother. Let me show you. You do realize you are who you what you post, right? We are. I am who I am in these videos. I am what I tweet. I am what I post. I am what I put on Instagram. People act like in the modern era that God is so pissed off at the political opposition, but he died for them people. He died for them people. It's fascinating to me. So I'm just different in that sense. I think a lot of the left and the right, they're just, and I'm talking about believers, what I mean. I think I'm not trying to sound self-righteous when I say this. I'm just trying to give what I think to be inaccurate because I've been in this place. I've been here. I've been in this place where I want to smoke or I'm pressed to tell her I'm a street dude. I've been there. I've had to fight against it. What I'm about to say, I'm not trying to say it self-righteously, but I think a lot of believers on the left and the right are woefully deceived about who they are before God because they don't love. I remember there was a point where if you challenge someone being loving, they would say you're doing it because they don't agree with you, because they're not woke. They don't agree. And it's like, wow, fam. So you can't even challenge a person for being unloving? That's fundamental to what it means to be a believer. These people are rude, impatient, unkind, and I've done all these things. I am guilty as charged. I've done all of it. Insisting on your own way, keeping a record of wrongs, accusing. One time, somebody said to me one time, yeah, right, bro. Why don't you just tell me the truth and say what you really, like I forgot I said something. I was like, nah, that's how I feel. Like, yeah, right. Yeah, ha, you trying to lie to me. Tell me the truth. And I didn't say anything. I just liked the comment and I kept it moving. But you know what I wanted to say? Here's what I wanted to say. And this is why I don't try to go back and forth anymore. This is my platform. I like this platform. I say what I want. If you disagree, cool. If you want to make a video about what I said, but I'm not doing any more debates because I debated Voddie. I had a great time. It was fun. I loved it, but I'm not debating over race and stuff. Don't tag me anymore on Facebook. Don't say nothing to me. I'm not debating anymore. Let me tell you the main reason why. It's not because there's not good things to say. I don't have it. It's because a lot of people are so offended. I think I'm a pastor, but I know a lot of pastors, and I've been here, who are woefully immature. You are too immature to be online because you're so easily offended. And I do not think the Lord is pleased. He's revealed to me he hasn't been pleased with me about things, and I had to scale back. Now, there's nothing wrong with being passionate. I mean, I crack jokes and stuff. I had to scale back. I had to step back and be like, hold on, man, because I'm a street dude. So when this person was like, you just lying to me, don't lie to me. This is what I wanted to say, and I did it because I was like, let me just like the comment and keep it moving. But I wanted to say, fam, first of all, who are you that I would need to lie to you? Like if I'm going to lie, if I'm going to sin and lie, it's going to be to protect my family or because my life is in danger. You are no threat to me. I don't even care about what you think enough to lie to you. You're not that important to me at all that I would lie to you. These people are so self-inflated. Like everyone thinks they're so important. And it's like, fam, I don't care what you think. Like, you really don't know who I am, fam. I could care less what you think. Like, I have no reason to lie to you because I don't even respect you enough to want you to like me or like what I'm saying. I don't care. That's what I wanted to say, and I did it because of this reason. Because it would have been in text, and so I'm telling y'all how it was. I did say it. I did it. But I felt, this is why I'm like, you know what, man? I don't need to debate and stuff. I'm good. Because and some of these people, too, they're not pastors, so they say whatever they want. Or their churches, I don't know if they follow them. They're not accountable. I have people that be like, hey, Pastor Kurt, when you said this, I was kind of confused and because of watching my pastor say that. So I took a couple years ago, I'm going to take a comment down. Took a video down. Because someone in my church was like, Pastor Kurt, these people aren't pastors. So you want me to get up there and I got to fight against telling you just a chump to me, and then I end up sinning, and everybody sees that, and I'm not. So I'm telling you right now, if you're watching this and you're like, I want to debate, you don't even hit me. You don't need my debate. You can take my video, mark it up, say what you want, do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. I don't need to debate nobody because I don't think we're at a place where I'm not mature enough. I'm not mature enough to have people call me names that I'm not and tell me things that you would not say if I were 5 inches in front of you. You wouldn't say it. You wouldn't. And I'm not talking about on some tough guys, just you wouldn't say it. It's easy to be tough when it's through text and online. It's easy to do that. I just think we've lost the love that we're supposed to have. Love is not, if I agree with my brother, I love him. That's what the world does. Man, people, I've said this before, man, be careful who you call a coward, fam. Revelation 21:8 says, but the cowardly, that's the first category that God uses of people who are going to spend eternity in hell. If you call me a coward, you're telling me that I'm going to hell because I don't stand up for what you think I should. Fam, you better be careful. You better be careful because the Bible says you are liable to hellfire if you call someone a fool. I think we've lost that. We've lost our sensitivities because we're so afraid of, and because we think we forget that it's not flesh and blood we're dealing with. So now let me get to the topic, the wonderful irony of Voddie Baucham. Again, I hope all of you get this book. Let me put this up again unless you came to this chat late. I think this is a book. I think everyone, believer, should get this book. And because I heard what he said about it, and I think he says some good things. And I think you need a book like this to understand the sexual acronym community. But let me tell you about the irony, the wonderful irony of Voddie Baucham. And I don't know if he meant to do this or not, but I think this is wonderfully ironic. The book, and so here's the irony, and here's the irony. The premise of the book, here's what it says here. Let me show you one more time. So you see it, I'm getting it from right here and what he said. How sexual activists hijacked the civil rights movement. Okay. This is his book. This is not me. It's not like being black. So he's basically saying basically what he's saying is your sexual issues, your sexual minority is not like being like black people who are minorities, ethnic minorities. I'm not saying he would use the term minority. I'm just trying to make sure you see it. So the premise of his new book is that racial issues are separate from sexual and gender issues. They were. But that the sexual activists hijacked, and he has a brilliant breakdown of the flag. I'm sure he does this in the book. Man, does he have a brilliant breakdown of the gay pride flag. I don't want to say it because I think you should go get his book and read it. It's a brilliant breakdown of that joint. But his point is this, that the issues are separate, right? They're separate issues. His new book is saying racial issues are separate from sexual and gender issues. Here's why that's wonderfully ironic. Because in this day, because I think Voddie's first book, Fault Lines, actually did the opposite. I think what Voddie's book Fault Lines did, because of CRT, and it was mainly targeting CRT. Let me back up. I don't think Voddie's book was what did this, but his book contributed to a thinking about these issues from the conservative Christian side. The premise of the new book is that the race issues and the sexual issues are separate. But when you're a Christian and you bring up race issues and they call you woke, you know what they're saying? You know what woke means? Woke isn't just the way it's used now, not the way it was originally intended. That's a different conversation. The way people use woke now is they incorporate the left agenda, right? If you say you're woke, you're saying caring about racial issues as a Christian or anyone is woke, all right? And woke today includes, according to Voddie and others, which is true, it includes the sexual acronym community. It includes their values. It includes the logic of Black Lives Matter, the end of the family structure that God created. Woke incorporates all of that. And so whenever you bring up racial concerns in the church or out of it, you are called woke by the conservative side, but woke means you incorporate all these things. It's not separated. It's not separated. But here, Voddie's book is separating the two. Voddie is acknowledging that racial issues are not sexual issues, but all the conservatives who will support this book, who make you feel like you're a chump if you don't agree with fault lines, they all consider racial, sexual issues, all of it as a leftist agenda. But Voddie is saying the issues are separate. So that means you can care about racial issues and not care about sexual and gender issues. But when you're a conservative and you use the word woke, you're basically saying that all of the issues are the same. And here's what's wonderfully ironic, because this is what Voddie's book is saying. It's saying this: sexual activists hijacked the civil rights movement. They took the civil rights movement and made it equal. They made it one and the same thing. And that's what you gotta hear his breakdown of the colors of the flag. Woo! Love it. Voddie killed that joint. The sexual acronym community hijacked it and made them together. So when you say someone who brings up racial issues is woke and incorporates all of it, then guess what? You are imitating the sexual activists that hijacked that movement, the civil rights movement. You're more imitating them than the people are that you're accusing of being woke. That is crazy. Wonderfully ironic. And Voddie's book, Fault Lines, I don't think he meant, it was going to CRT for real. But I think because of woke is this all-encompassing term, I'm sorry, conservatives. I'm friends with many of you. But when you use the word woke, you think racial, sexual, all of it. And anyone who does any of them is all in one category. You do not separate them. But Voddie's book is proving they should be separate. How ironic that the heavyweight champ of the conservative side when it comes to these issues is showing that these issues are actually separated, but the sexual activists people, they came and hijacked the movement. So every time you call someone woke, conservative Christian, and you're acting as if they're racial issues, they're also speaking about these issues, you are imitating the people that Voddie wrote a book about, much more than the people who were bringing up this issue. Thank you, Voddie Baucham. Thank you. Wonderfully ironic. I love it. You can't make this stuff up. You can't make it up. Oh, man, I could say so much more about that. That's why I love it. I love it. I think it's the wonderful irony. I don't even know if Voddie meant to do that. But it's just crazy. So now, conservatives, what are you going to do now? Is it woke every time someone thinks that racism is still an issue? Or is it just racism doesn't exist because it's a social construct? But the sin existed. The sin exists. I just think it's just fascinating to me. It's fascinating. Sexual and racial issues are separate. So lastly, let me tell you why I reject the whole woke moniker when it comes to talking about race. Let me tell you why. Partly because of what I just said. I think that was a way, first of all, here's the other reason why. All right, let's go here. This ought to be fun. Let's go here. All right. One of the other reasons why I reject the woke moniker when it comes to talking about race is because of what we're about to read right here. Look at this right here. The title of this article is called, it's on Spurgeon.com's page, the Spurgeon Library, right? Spurgeon.org. And it says, the reason why America burned Spurgeon's sermons and sought to kill him. And let's read this right here. Spurgeon is in danger of an auto da fe, whatever. The Montgomery Mail, Alabama says, a gentle man of this city requests us to invite, and we do hereby invite all persons in Montgomery, Alabama, who possess copies of the sermons of the notorious English abolitionists, Spurgeon, to send them to the jail yard to be burned on next Friday, this day week. A subscription is also on foot to buy of our booksellers all copies of said sermons now in their stores to be burned on the same occasion. Does anybody say nay? Right? And then it goes into this. Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation 154 years ago today, promising liberty to some 3 million enslaved black men and women. Charles Spurgeon also fight the evils of slavery. The hope of deliverance seemed far away. It was God that gave Abraham Lincoln, who led the nation onward till emancipation flamed upon its banners. Spurgeon exchanged correspondences with Frederick Douglass, received former slaves into his pastor's college and pulpit, and condemned slavery in his sermons and media articles. I do from my inmost soul detest slavery, and although I commune at the Lord's table with men of all creeds, yet with a slaveholder I have no fellowship of any sort or kind. Whenever one is called upon me, I have considered it my duty to express my detestation of his wickedness, and I would soon think of receiving a murderer into my church as a man-stealer. How did America respond to Spurgeon's abolition? Here are a few published comments from different parts of the country. Florida. Spurgeon is a beef-eating, my kind of dude. He was a chubby dude too. I banged with him. Beef-eating, puffed-up, vain, over-righteous, pharisaical, English blabmouth. Right. This was from the Southern Opinion of Reverend Spurgeon, New York, March 1, 1860. Virginia. Spurgeon is a fat, overgrown boy. Louisiana. Spurgeon is a hell-deserving Englishman. South Carolina. Spurgeon is a vulgar young man with soiled, sleek hair, prominent teeth, and a self-satisfied air. North Carolina. Many would like the opportunity, like a good opportunity at this hypocritical preacher. Right? It says Spurgeon's character was assassinated throughout the Confederacy. His sermons, which in 1862 to 18, in 1 year, sold 1 million copies annually. They were censured. His books, which sold 1,000 copies per minute at trade shows, were publicly destroyed. Sermon bonfires illuminated jail yards, plantations, and bookshops throughout the southern states. I could read more. Let me tell you why I think the whole woke and race thing, because there is a pattern when you speak out against slavery, whether it was happening in Spurgeon's day or looking back on it, there is a pattern, almost a spirit, that immediately mocks that person for being all the things. You know, now it's your woke. About 10 years ago, when Black Lives Matter started happening, and most people that were believers that were speaking up, they weren't lock and step with the movement, Black Lives Matter. They were just saying, we see these things. We tolerate, we come to your seminaries, we read the Puritan books, we know Jonathan Edwards had slaves, all these things, right? They were bringing this stuff up, and it was first you're a social justice warrior, then you're a cultural Marxist, then it became you're a race baiter, and now you're woke. And so now it's just woke or race. No one calls you a cultural Marxist that much or a social justice warrior as much. But you got all this push from the beginning. When slavery was happening, if you spoke out against it, someone like Spurgeon was the prince of preachers. The prince of preachers. And this dude said, I would rather have a murderer in my church than a slaveholder. But yet, we talk about Jonathan and all these people like they were men of their times. A lot of conservative Christians do. But Spurgeon was totally against it. Totally against it. I mean, it's been 1 million copies of his sermon in 1 year, and they burned him because he disagreed with it. Keep in mind that slaves hadn't even been freed yet. They didn't get freed fully until Juneteenth, 1865. The Emancipation Proclamation was 1863, I think. And a couple years later is when they got hip to it and said, "Are you free?" They wanted to kill Spurgeon. They wanted to kill him. So when I hear people, this is the pattern. There is a spirit, a demonic spirit, that has you criticize and make downplay and make the person who's bringing these things up the problem. Now, I'm not saying it's a one-to-one. Obviously, there are people today who race bait and who do those things. And there's a place to criticize that, 100%. I've done it. I criticize people when I think they're doing that. But what's happened is, in the culture we live in, a lot of everything I've been talking about, all the stuff about love of money, all the second greatest commandment has been decimated. And so whatever spirit that is, or spirits that God is allowing to continue to have influence, have so lowered the bar on interpersonal relationships that the spirit of that is now why we're arguing with each other on Facebook, calling other professing believers cowards and things like that. You don't even know these people. You don't even know. I had to tell one dude, fam, I'm a pastor of a church. The last 2 years were the most difficult of my life. We were under spiritual warfare at my church like nothing I've ever seen. I was on the front lines trying to save people's lives, marriages. My family got hit, all these things, bro. You have no idea. No one, I'm not tripping off of what Timothy Brindle and them say about wokeism. I don't care what happens in that stuff. I got real life going on over here. At my church on Sunday, we had about 14 babies be dedicated, 18 new members in the church, and 14 people shared their testimony and got baptized. Now that's all God. But humanly speaking, myself and others were on the front lines fighting. It was a great day for me as the pastor of this church to see that. And you think I'm a coward because I'm not standing up for woke, against woke? Because I disagree with what Timothy Brindle did and the way he carried it about Shy's song? Or because I'm not a fan of fault lines? Man, this is why I can't debate. I'm not mature enough. Because sometimes I wish that God would just let them get smacked in the face. And this is the street me sometimes. I just wish that sometimes the Lord let some of these folks, you haven't been on the front lines like I have. You're not no pastor. You're not in the trenches for real. You're not on the phone at 1 a.m. trying to plead with people to not commit adultery because it's worshiping Satan. You think I care about woke? You think I'm worried about that? I'm a pastor. That the Bible tells me I should do. And that's why I think like this whole stuff, there's a spirit. I'm an Ephesians 6:12 kind of guy. There's a spirit that is behind a spirit of criticism. That when you expose sin like racism, slavery, whatever you want, which I think is second greatest commandment, decimation, right? Charles Spurgeon got attacked. You can't even mention that today without someone calling you woke or whatever, and they think that they're doing God's work. I tell you what. So they thought they were doing God's work in the Fourth Crusade, and you ended up fighting each other Christians, Catholics fighting Christians, because dude wanted his kingship back, and then the whole time Islam just came on the rise. Fourth Crusade. Look it up. I reject that stuff. I reject so it doesn't even bother me anymore. I could care less. I don't care if you think I'm woke or not. What I care about is when I stand before God, 1 Corinthians 4, he'll give me my commendation. He knows what's what. I don't care what you think, fam. And so I'm just saying it because I think some people really, really believe that their perspective is so important that when you disagree with them, when you say they think you're not telling the truth or because you're lying to them, I lie about what? Why would I sin for you? It's just fascinating to me. Lastly, this is where I think Marxism was a red herring. All right. I think Marxism was a red herring. And specifically, let me be specific because I don't think all Marxism is a red herring. But I think it was a red herring specifically in this point. In the way, even in Voddie Baucham's talks today, this came up, this idea of exploitation versus the rich and the poor. And they attributed to Marxism, and so all the oppressed and oppressor. And if you hear conservatives talk, if you listen to them talk, they will almost sound like that is exclusively something that Karl Marx came up with. And Karl Marx wasn't a believer. It's a wicked way to see the world and to put people in those categories and all of that, right? And I just think that's fascinating to me because it's a red herring. It's a red herring. Because Karl Marx is not the inventor of the categories of oppressed and oppressor. He's not an inventor of the category of exploitation. I can show you a place where it does come from, though. Proverbs 22:16. Whoever oppresses the poor to increase his own wealth or gives to the rich will only come to poverty. This is what I think is happening in America. Yeah, America is still a rich nation. It's still there, but it's slowly coming to poverty. See, poverty, what happens first is you become spiritually impoverished. See, people think America is getting worse because of the left policies. No, that's flesh and blood. I think the Lord is displeased. You can say whatever you want. I'm not saying that there aren't Christians and there aren't general church. I'm not saying that. But I think America is the Christian nation, and we're known mostly in the world by our subjugation of people, women, and so forth. Foreigners, when they came. Remember in the 20th century, no one really talks about communism and the fear of communism. No one talks about how when the first immigrants came over from like Ireland and them, man, they thought they were sympathetic to communists. Man, they got the worst. Italians, all these people, even though they were white skinned, it took a while for them to be like, all right, if you weren't sympathetic to communism, then you were able to be accepted into American culture. But there was a period where, man, that stuff, that McCarthyism, That senator that was telling people that said you're a communist, that was worse than being called woke back then. You would lose your whole livelihood if someone thought that. All that stuff, all this fear, all of it, all that stuff is a part of America. But look, whoever oppresses the poor to increases wealth, that's 100% what we call slavery was. What was Jim Crow? It was economic sanctions against black people, oppress the poor, and increase the wealth of other people. That's what trickle-down economics is. We give it these fancy terms, trickle-down economics. I could show you a 55-year study that not taxing the rich because they make money circulate will trickle down to the rest of society. And it's like it doesn't work. They just get richer, and middle class is slowly getting bumped out. This is scripture. Remember what James said this? What did James say here? But have you dishonored the poor man? Are not the rich the ones who oppress you and drag you to court? You know what that word oppress is? Here's the Greek word. I'm gonna let it say it. This is the Greek word. I'll just say it. The Greek word for which translated as oppressed here in James 2 is kata dinasteo, and it means oppress or exploit. That's what it means. It means oppress, exploit, or dominate. To cause severe hardship, to oppress, to overwhelm, to treat violently, suppress, to conquer, to be enslaved. He said aren't the rich the ones who oppress you, who exploit you? That's what, now granted, Karl Marx was saying more than that, but why are we pretending like that's unique to him? The Bible has categories of oppressor and oppressor. All Karl Marx, all he did, don't get me wrong, I'm not a Karl Marx dude. I don't bang with him at all. I bang with Jesus. I don't bang with CRT. The only reason why I like CRT is because you can't spell Kurt without it and you can't spell Christ without it. That's it. I don't care about CRT. I don't care about none of that stuff. I care about the people in my church. I care about those people on the Lord. But when I make these videos, I have time to say these things. I don't say this stuff in my church. My church, they got to watch these videos to see this. I don't talk like this in my church. It's not an issue. But when I'm Kirk Kennedy doing this, it's fine. I can talk about it. Let's get it. But like, it's like oppress versus oppress paradigm is not unique to Marxism. The Bible has these categories. James is warning against it. Saying, look, man, don't the rich oppress you? Are the rich, and then we're acting like, well, that's Marxism and that's just, as if like, apart from Karl Marx, that wouldn't exist, that it's a false dichotomy. No, it isn't. It is very much that America built its nation based on the exploitation and oppression that Karl Marx spoke about. It doesn't mean that he was right in all things and that we should follow him, or that his economic position was the one that we should be. But I'm not going to act like the dude can't make an observation. You go to a non-Christian doctor who you trust to tell you about your medical condition. Non-Christians can say some things that make sense based on general observation. It was a red herring. Marxism was a red herring. It was another one of those things to just downplay the reality. No, people exploit people all the time, fam. Corporations exploit people all the time. And you're gonna just gaslight people. Let's use that term, right? Gaslight people who bring it up. So for all of these reasons, I mean, there's so much more I could say. I could do a 3-hour video, but I'm not, though. For all of these reasons, I think a lot of this stuff is a wash. I do think there's a wonderful irony in Voddie's book that he separates the racist and sexual agendas. He separates them. But yet the conservatives, primarily them, when they're critiquing you, it's because woke is a pejorative, it's a negative term. They're basically saying you support everything that defines what woke means to them. They'll say, no, we don't. Man, get out of here, man. I ain't trying to hear that, man. I've heard these conversations. When somebody exposes you, then you say that that's not what you do. All right, cool. All right, bruv. Okay, governor. All right. I'm just not seeing it. So I just think a lot of this stuff is not worth it. And I think a lot of what we're seeing today is spiritual warfare. I think a lot of why the country is where it is today has nothing to do. Well, it does have something to do with the policies are big, sure, but the Lord is allowing the enemy to push his agenda, because I think it's the right thing for God to do. I don't think it's good for God to allow a country to flourish in ways that he considers flourishing when they're claiming to believe. I mean, remember the category. Jesus said, these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. Right? I think America, not every Christian and not the whole, there were genuine believers, 100%. I'm grateful. Some of those abolitionists did lead eventually to, so all that's true. But I think when you say you talk about, people talk about slavery ended as if that was it. Then you had Jim Crow. And that wasn't just in the South. Jackie Robinson played for the Brooklyn Dodgers. That was in New York. There was racism all over the country. It wasn't just the least racist place towards black people was the West. And then the Midwest. That's why the Great Migration, they went up to the Chicago, Detroit area. Both major migrations because they were sympathetic to the black cause when blacks fled the South. Like, it's like, I just think a lot of this stuff is just fascinating. And it's sad to me to watch people. So you're such a tough guy. You're so brave because you stand up against wokeness. Man, I wish you, how do you stand up against the sin in you? How do you stand up against anger? How do you stand up against self-righteousness? Well, make that a cause. How come we never make what the Bible says, the fruits of the flesh a cause? Why is it always something outside of us? I'm trying to make the causes that I go against the sins that I struggle with. So I'm not worried. So yeah, I'm not debating nobody. I got a lot to say, but I say them in these videos and that's that. All right, let's go to the tape. Let's go to the tape. Hey, yo, what's good, baby? You heard Tim Brindle recent interview? No, I haven't heard it. Nope. Yep, I actually look forward to this new Voddie book also. Yeah, man, I think, hey, listen, I think it's a great, I think it's gonna be a good book, man. From the interviews I saw, I think believers should get that joint, for real. It's sad how we as people can easily throw the baby out with the bathwater when we disagree with each other. I'm good. Yeah, I've done it before too, bro. A lot of what I'm talking about are things the Lord has pulled me from. And I still can struggle with it at times, especially when people call me something that I just know I'm not. And then it's just like, that's why I'm just like, sometimes I'm just like, thanks for letting me know, bro. If you get a comment like that from me, that just means I'm not going to go back and forth with you. And it's not because I'm a coward or can't. It's because I don't care enough. I don't even think, I'm not trying to be arrogant, but I just think my time is taken, man. I got a lot going on. I don't care enough to have these long conversations with you through Facebook. I only do it when I feel like I have to. I thought Cole was sparing the clip. Nah, I just got 2 shirts on, Future. I just got 2 shirts on. That ain't it. All right, let's go. Soldier Joe. I always remember your saying, vote your conscience, but don't lose it. 100%, bro. That's my mantra to everyone. Listen, everyone will stand before God and give an account. I think you got to vote your conscience, but don't lose your conscience for a vote. You should not lose your character for a vote. You shouldn't do it. I think it's sinful against the Lord. Yeah. DJ, facts. Yep. Well said. Pastor Kurt, do you know a brother apologist is willing to point out to Timothy Brindle that he's being theological? I believe the inception of his beef. That's the inception of his beef with Shai. You know what's funny? I'm not going to say a lot because Shai said he was going to address it, but I'll say this. I think Shai would say he didn't say some of the things that Timothy Brindle said he said. And I think Shai would say that the song Elder Statesman that they're attributing as a jab to Tim, that's not what he was doing. That's not what he was doing. That's not what that song was about. It wasn't a jab. And that's sad that they're using that jab as justification partly for his song. They've been friends for you. I hope they can reconcile and talk through it. I think a lot of this is mudslinging. The Democrats created Jim Crow laws. So what? I don't care who created them. They're yeah. I don't care who's creating them. That's not the point. The point isn't who created the laws. The point is that did we honor the Lord? Are you honoring the Lord by that? Unsub on the lack of knowledge and speaking out lies. Good. Unsub, brother. Please do, Jason, because the fact that you're saying that, you're exactly what I'm talking about in this video. Exactly the people I'm talking about. So please follow Jason Jackson and unsub because you're saying I'm speaking out lies. That's an accusation against my character, brother. I don't know you. May the Lord give you grace. And I hope that someday I can be more like you and not speak out lies. The land of neologians, always 100%, fam. 100%. 100%, bro. It's crazy how some of our fellow brothers in the faith who emphasize total depravity don't consistently apply. Richie Rich. You know, a lot of us used to say this back in the day. It was fascinating to me. I was like, wow. So we would say we're in the already not yet. But when we bring up racism, we talk about it's already. It was fascinating to me. The total depravity exists, and yet you consistently apply this. Just don't apply it. Like racism and slavery is somehow, it's just wild. Don't forget about COINTELPRO. Brother, that's a whole other video. So let me tell you quickly what COINTELPRO is in case you don't know. So J. Edgar Hoover was the head of the FBI, and COINTELPRO was counterintelligence program. It was, and this is all documented. So tell Jason Jackson, who called me a liar, tell him make sure that you add this to the lies and the false knowledge, the lack of knowledge I'm speaking out. Jason, make sure you add this to that. Counterintelligence program, I think it started around 1966, but it could be 64, during the Vietnam War. It was a program headed by the FBI that targeted Martin Luther King, the Black Power movement, and it planted, this is all documented, that it was a FBI, which is basically at that time the police department of the government. They were planting lies, false evidence, and narratives about leaders in the black community and about people that they thought were communists out there and falsely arresting people, shooting and killing people. This is all documented. In fact, the way it got exposed was in 1971. This was the Muhammad Ali, George Foreman fight in Africa. The Boombaye, Ali, Boombaye, Ali. That fight was so big that the FBI building in the small town in Pennsylvania shut down, and they all left to go watch that fight. 6 white people broke into the FBI building. This is 1971, and they found all these documents of the FBI falsely planting all of this stuff. They turned it over to, if I'm not mistaken, it was a writer of the Washington Post and a writer for the LA Times, and they exposed it. And then finally in 1973, Congress dealt with it and outlawed the practice of it. And that was supposed to be when the civil rights legislation had gotten rid of systemic racism, but yet the FBI was working to try to frame people, but that wasn't racist. Jason Jackson, I'm speaking lies now, huh, bruh? You can look all this stuff up. You can look all this stuff up. It's just wild. My God is on point. Amen to that. Thing is, there were tons of folks who openly disagree with slavery and fought for abolition. Not just John Brown either. Check for Mark Knowles. Yeah, great book. I agree that existed. But the fact that there needed to be a fight for it was really the problem, right? That's part of the problem. That's part of the problem. Because while there were people who fought for it, think about this for a second. That is true. Praise God that there were people that did and that it eventually ended. But we could get into a conversation about why Abraham Lincoln really did it. He didn't end it because he thought a conviction that it was wrong. Frederick Douglass had been appealing to him for some time to do it. There were other reasons, but that's a different video. But that's a great book. I think that's true. Yeah. The so-called progressive should have been called regressive. Their sexual and social ethics have been creeping back in the first 100%. I agree with that. But I would say, here's what I would say, K Nice. I would say that that's true on one level, but I think there's spiritual warfare here. I think the Lord, honestly, this is what I believe. And I can't one-to-one, but this is what I honestly think. And it's funny because everyone says what they think. Voddie says what he thinks. Tim says what he, all these people, you just agree with them and you disagree with them. That's fine. I don't think this is about leftist policies. I think this is the Lord not allowing his name to be used in a way. And the Lord he's not quick to do things, right? The Lord doesn't do things right away. He'll take his time and let things develop. Bammers don't be getting crushed for years later. It takes time sometimes for the Lord to bring about the Assyrians to come and attack you, or for Babylon to come and take the southern kingdom. It takes time. The Lord doesn't do things quickly all the time. And I think what we're experiencing now is a lack of the presence of God because of the elongated sin. And I think the unwillingness to take responsibility for it, the unwillingness to do it. I think that's been a challenge. I've been listening to Frustrated Christian recently. I'd love to hear some commentary behind your points on the album. Would love to do that, brother. Would love to do that. Yeah, I got 4 albums, 3 albums called Frustrated Christian, part 1, 2, and 3. And then C4 was like the 4th sort of Frustrated Christian. And then I did the appendix, which hits all this stuff. I'm going to put out Gay is the New Black, the video. So be looking for that. I got a copy of it. I'm going to post it on my YouTube page. And I wrote this back in 20. You'll see it. This is basically what Voddie's talking about. But I was bringing this stuff up 6 years ago. Right. Thank you, bro. Appreciate you, DJ. He has a scroll. I don't know. Jesus does. I hope you mean that. Right. My man, propaganda check president. Yeah, that's what really happened. And to be honest with you, funny enough, it was propaganda's. So propaganda dropped Precious Puritans, I think, if I'm not mistaken, in October of, I want to say it was on his album, was it Excellence or Excellent? But I think he dropped it in October of 2013 or something like that. Well, that's when it really hit. And a lot of white evangelicals got offended. And so I remember Thabiti, this is when the Gospel Coalition, Thabiti was on the Gospel Coalition. This is when the Gospel Coalition was kind of popping. And he was trying to explain what prop meant by Precious Puritans. And that's what really started it. I think Propaganda's song started the disdain for, because that was before Mike Brown even got killed. I think his song started the disdain of the conversation because we were attacking people's Puritans. And here's what's interesting to me. We don't know if these people went to heaven or not. Some people are like, man, what are you talking about? How could you say that? Because I don't know. Because Jesus said these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. I don't know what Jonathan Edwards' heart was about. I don't know. I don't know that he went to heaven. Just because you like this theology. Do you remember Matthew 23? God said that the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat. So observe what they tell you, but don't imitate their lifestyle. And he basically said, I'm going to use them to teach you, but they're not qualified. They're going to hell when they die, but I'm going to still use them to teach you. What does that mean? Just because he had good theology doesn't mean he's with the Lord. It's not theology that saves you. It's faith in Jesus, but then that faith produces character that imitates Jesus. It's not how good your theology is. There are people in other countries that don't know anything about the doctrines of grace, that love Jesus, and they're going to have high places in the kingdom. And this is part of the problem with America. That's a whole different, never mind. That's a whole different ballgame. If we're honest, Sally, we're more like Jonah. 100%, brother. Bro, that's where we are. And it's a certain camp. I've done it too, but certain camps where they are the most biblical and can't see the air. Brother, I'm with you. Well said, bro. You and KB have very similar viewpoints on the topics of politics. Read this book, Dangerous. Yeah, read this book, Dangerous. It's really good. Yeah, I was just talking to KB a week or two ago. We were talking about this stuff. He was thinking about maybe bringing me on to Southside Rabbi, but if that happens, that'd be great. If not, no big deal. But a good brother, yeah. As a matter of fact, it's funny. So when I debated Voddie, I think it was 2 years ago, I talked to KB afterwards, and he was the first one to give me the Spurgeon quote. That article that I read you, my man Josh sent me that joint. We were talking about this the other day, and I was like, you know what, man? I think I'm gonna do a video on this. But KB was the one to give me that quote, and I was like, bro, if I had got this from you before I debated Voddie and Tim, I'd have pulled this bad boy out when Voddie was like, you're slandering the church. Man, I would have been like, bro. I think there is a spirit that attacks you when you call out righteousness, especially if it really, steps on people's toes. There's just a spirit. And I think you see it in Spurgeon. You see it now. Now it's just really interesting. I really appreciate how genuine you are, Kurt, in your lives, and that you interact with us, whether we agree or disagree on certain things. Keep up the dialogues and pointing people to Jesus Christ. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that, famo. Thank you, man. Pass that good word, brother. Edwin Ramirez, man, pastor. Listen, that's all you had to. I just had to see pastor. I respect that, brother. You know why? Because I know what it takes. I'm a pastor. I know what it takes, and I know I can just because you said pastor. I know some of the things you've been through, brother. It's been a crazy few years for us. Respect to you, bro. Respect to you, brother. Respect to you. That was when you ate the book. Yep, that's right. Well, there you go. You got it, DJ. So me and a guy named A.D. Robles were in this somewhat public feud, and he sent me a book, and it was a book that I felt like was mocking me, so I ripped it up live. I was going live. I was opening it, and I ripped it up. And then a person from my church was really disturbed by that. I took the video down right away. But then me and A.D. Robles had a wonderful conversation. We reconciled. It was beautiful. I wish more people did that. I mean, it was like, I don't know that brother. I don't know what he's doing. But that conversation, we reconciled. He even publicly apologized to me. Man, it was sweet. Man, that's the stuff the Lord can do. Let him know. That's how we do it, baby. I'm expecting that he's going to contradict a lot of things regarding racial issues. I don't know. He could be, but I think from what I heard in his interviews, I think believers should get Voddie's book. Let me show you the joint again, just so you see it. I think you should get it so you get hip. You get hip to the sexual acronym community because they on the move. And they got some believers thinking that it's loving. They got some believers thinking that love is love and that we should be a part of it. So I just think, nah, fam, we just not going to be. I knew where you were going with this live as soon as I saw the title. Well played. Thank you, Ross. You knew it. Thank you. You said that on Gay as a New Black about... Thank you. This dude right here, Brandon, is probably one of the most... Probably got the greatest mind for hip hop. His mind, he remembers everything. If I make a mistake on here, he'll be like, hey, bro, it was that. He knows. When I'm going to put the video up, be looking for the video. If you subscribe to the channel, you'll get a notification probably tonight or tomorrow, and check out the video. I was saying this years ago. I brought up Bayard Rustin, and that he was the speechwriter for Martin Luther King, a out and about gay man. And some people attribute that the civil rights movement and the gay movement go hand in hand because he wrote apparently a lot of the I Have a Dream speech. He wrote it, but he was behind the scenes. You're going to see it in the video. You'll hear it in the song. Yeah, I talked about all this stuff, man. Boy, don't those insults sound very familiar now? Nothing 100. This is why I said that stuff doesn't even bother you, man. Because it happened to Spurgeon. And Spurgeon was he was the Prince of Preachers. So even when whoever, Jason, whatever, do you, fam. Unsubscribe. It's just crazy to me. Dude's a wildin'. The funny thing about Spurgeon is how he is now regarded. Isn't that funny, bro? By most of the preachers that call others woke. Man, that is so... Narukami Tootie, man, that is so right. I was laughing at this earlier because I was thinking Muhammad Ali is the same way. People like love the champ now before he died, but back then they hated Muhammad Ali. It's like, man, they call Spurgeon the Prince of Preachers, man. You got Spurgeon quotes everywhere, but man, Spurgeon would go after their actual views on those who own slaves. If you think they were men of their times, Spurgeon wouldn't even let you in his church. It's fascinating to me to see that. You know what I'm saying? Rich, bap, 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 bap. My dude, I appreciate that. Appreciate that. It's so easy to be hellbound now because of social media, voicing thoughts to be multiplied and influencing people to, yeah, 100%, bro. You're right, bro. I try my best, man, to not do that because I think part of what I'm going to be giving account for are the things I say on these videos. So I try to stay balanced. I try to be biblical. Even if I'm wrong, I try to at least present to you what scriptures influence my thinking. I don't just be calling you mad because you, like some of the people that disagree say, what scriptures are you using? Like I have plenty more. I just, I'm not gonna make a 4-hour video. Like what scriptures are you using? I use there's biblical logic that informs my thinking. I don't just think stuff because I'm in my feelings. I think I'm over that. I'm too grown for that. Not that that can't happen, but I think we're as a pastor and as a Christian, we're called to be sober minded. So I think about these things very seriously and try to present why I think and feel this way to you guys and to others. So I just you call me whatever you want, but most of you don't even have no scriptures to back up what you're accusing me of or what you actually do. Some of these cats got CRT, PTSD over the word, man, 100%, bro. You hear oppressed and dudes be rolling their eyes and it's like, fam, what are you rolling your eyes for? Like that's a biblical, Marx did not come up with, this is when you're so theoretical. Because Marxism is a socio-economic philosophy that you're only mad at it because it rivals capitalism, or socialism. These isms, they're the Bible does not in any way, shape, or form command you to live under a certain socio-economic, philosophy. It does not. There are Christians who are in communist countries that are glorifying the Lord. There are Christians that are in socialist countries that are glorifying the Lord. We just happen to, and by God's sovereignty, be in a capitalistic, economic, philosophical society. Thank Adam Locke and whoever else, right? That's fine. I don't have a problem with capitalism per se. But I do have a problem when you can't critique it without being called a Marxist. It's ridiculous. Can you imagine, like I said earlier, you critique your wife and she says, oh, you hate marriage. Or your kid, you tell your kid, son, I think you're wrong in this. Oh, you hate the relationship between parents and children. Man, get out of here, bro. These dudes are it's just sad. It's just sad. It's sad. It's sad. You're right about what Carl and Lenin observed about the elite classes domination society. They could not solve the problem because its origin yeah, well said. Well said, Squeak. That's 100. I've been saying that for years. I do not think that I would not follow Karl Marx to the ice cream store. I wouldn't follow Lenin to the bathroom. But I think people can make observations that are accurate, that are helpful, that are beneficial. We get it from philosophers, from teachers, from doctors, from athletes. None of these people who honor the Lord, but they can say some stuff that's true about society. But the categories of oppressed and oppressor had nothing to do with Marx. Their spiritual warfare was not with it 100%. They weren't believers, so they didn't have a way to do it. But there's a sense where we're talking about spiritual warfare. But when you think about flesh and blood, you will downplay the realities. That's why you don't hear Voddie or any of these people. At least I don't hear. I could be wrong. Let me back up. I don't hear him talk often. Let me back up. I could be wrong. Let me back up. I don't hear a lot of conservatives speak about the culture from a spiritual warfare perspective. They don't speak about the past from a second greatest commandment. They don't do it. It's all political. It's all theological. And so I'm going to come on here and tell y'all that. And if it influences you, sweet. If it doesn't, no harm, no foul. I got a church, man. I'm not trying to be America's pastor, but I try to be faithful in all that I do, even if I'm slipping. Squeak! Squeak got me out here off the Bloodsport joint, the Jean-Claude, the Van Damme joint, splitting down, hitting the dude up, boom. Thank you, brother, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, Ali Frazier. Foreman was 74. It was Ali Frazier. My bad. So I told you, Brandon is like the wall. Brandon is Denzel in the Book of Eli, whatever that was. That's where he memorized the whole thing. Denzel had the Bible in his head, and then you didn't even know it. He was blind to the end. That's Brandon. He just memorized the whole thing. I'm not disputing the other things. Thank you, bro. But if I'm wrong, you tell me, because I don't want to be wrong. Appendix, love it. T-Dog, appreciate it. No, that was a good album for me. That album, if you get a chance, go on wherever streaming service you want, called Kirk Kennedy, The Appendix, right? That album, I walked through so many things and explaining and breaking down sort of how America got to this place of racism. And it's not about being woke, man. It's not. Album was excellent. Thank you, bro. Man, KB and the Mean better get you on Southside Rabbi, please. That would be dope. They're good brothers, man. But if don't, I mean, I'm not tripping for real. But if they do, cool. That'd be cool. If not, no, I'm cool. In the South, the Confederacy still supported Edwards Pollard's 1960, the law, 100% the lost cause. Oh my gosh. What about the daughters of, where is that book? Hold on one second. I got a book here, the daughters of, what was that book? Where are you? The daughters of the Confederacy. Where are you at? Man, I'm about to show y'all one time. I got a book called Daughters of the Confederacy, where these white women in the South created songs and all this stuff to try to teach the lost cause as the reason for the Civil War. If it was about states' rights, then why did you create Jim Crow to punish those people? Like, it's fascinating to me. It's fascinating. Tim says Marxists are from Baal. They might be. You know what I think Marxists are? I think Marxists are made in God's image, is what I think. I think they're made in God's image and they need Jesus. And I bet you there will be people who are Marxists that profess faith in Jesus Christ, because Marxism is a political system. You'd have to show me specifically what sins do you need to repent of by being a Marxist? And this is what I mean about theological. I used to ask people, so if I'm woke, then what sins do I need to repent of? What does the scripture say about being woke? What do I need to repent of? And no one could answer that question. So is repentance vote conservative? Vote for Trump? That's what be repentance of woke. It's just you criticize the left for being influenced by the culture, and yet you use gaslighting, virtue signaling. None of those are sins that the Bible calls them. You got to translate what that means. If you're saying someone, call them a liar. Don't say they're gaslighting. Virtue signaling, what is that? Being self-righteous? Boasting about what you do. Say what it is biblically so people know what they're actually repenting of. And that's the problem. That's the problem, man. That's the problem. Daughters of Confederacy. Yep. Says, you believe, therefore you speak, brother. Let the truth be, let truth be true still. Keep persevering in the faith. Man, I appreciate you, Craig. Thank you. No, I do, man. I try to say these things. I give thought to these things. I try to think about them and present them. Doesn't mean you have to agree with them. That stuff you can't. What can you do with that? You know what I'm saying? Some people are going to agree. Some people are not going to agree. I'm fine with that. But I try to present things in a way that I hopefully are biblical and make sense. And if I'm wrong, I'm okay with that. I'm not trying to be wrong. I'm not trying to offend anybody. You know, I'm passionate at times when I talk, but I just think like a lot of stuff just have to, I just think the reality is what Mark said right here. Look at what Mark said. Folks have to stop tying faith to Jesus and political systems. It's sick. Bro, it's called syncretism, right? So let's make this real biblical, right? Let's do this real quick. Now, since you said that, I got to say something. All right, let's do this. Let's make this real biblical, Mark. I'm gonna show you why I think it's a. Now, granted, when Jesus taught, right, he taught from, he's explaining what things are, right? And so here's what Jesus says, right? Let's look at something that Jesus said right here. All right. So let's do this. Look at what this is Mark 4, the parable of the sower, right? Let's look at this real quick. I did a video on this, but let's look at it. All right, let's watch this. And he said to them, do you not understand this parable? How then will you understand all the parables? The sower sows the word, and these are the ones along the path where the word is sown. When they hear, Satan immediately comes and takes away the word that was sown in them. All right. Let me back up just so everybody knows what we're talking about. All right, listen. Jesus says this, listen, behold, a sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seed fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured it. Other seed fell on rocky ground where it did not have much soil, and immediately it sprang up, since it had no depth of soil. And when the sun rose, it was scorched, and since it had no root, it withered away. Other seed fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it, and it yielded no grain. And other seeds fell into good soil and produced grain, growing up and increasing and yielding 30, 60, and 100-fold. And he said, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. All right. And so then he's explaining what the parable is, right? And he says this in verse 14. The sower sows the word, and these are the ones along the path, the one where the bird snatched it up, right? These are the ones along the path where the word is sown. When they hear, Satan immediately comes and takes away the word that's sown in them, right? So they hear it, but then Satan comes and takes it away. And then he talks about the ones that land on the rock. And these are the ones sown on rocky ground. The ones who, when they hear the word, immediately receive it with joy. Listen to what he says right here about people who hear it. And listen to this. This is Jesus. These are his words, not mine. Listen. He says, and they had, verse 17. Let me go back, verse 16. And these are the ones sown on rocky ground, the ones who, when they hear the word, immediately receive it with joy. And they have no root in themselves. Listen to this, but endure for a while. So these are people who hear the gospel, respond, and can endure for a while. Then, when tribulation or persecution arises on account of the word, immediately they fall away. Isn't that crazy? That Jesus is saying that some people will hear, they'll endure for a while, they'll bear fruit, but then eventually they'll walk away. And you know what's scary is we see those people as genuine Christians. And then we get confused, like, what happened? This is because they were Christians on their own strength. You can endure for a while. That's crazy. Verse 18. And others, here's what we're talking about. Mark, here's what you're getting at, right? This is what you're getting at. This is what I call theological. This is where I get it from, theological. Well, sort of. And others are the ones sown among thorns. They are those who hear the word, but the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches and the desires for other things enter in and choke the word, and it proves unfruitful. All right. Think about this. Think about what Jesus is saying right here. This is what I think theological Christians do. And this is why I'm honestly concerned for them, right? Here's what I think they do, bro. It says this, look what it says. It says, the ones sown among the thorns, they hear the word, but the cares of the world, the deceitfulness of riches, and the desires for other things enter in and choke the word, and it proves unfruitful. So what basically it means is that those things are the thorns that enter in to the faith, and they're intertwined, right? Now, here's what's wild about it. I don't think these people think they're unbelievers. So in the seed sown on the rock, those people walked away from the faith. It said when trouble comes because of the word, so it's clear they walk away. These people don't. Jesus didn't say they walk away. He just says their cares of the world, deceitfulness of riches. I think politics is one of the main things that people care about in this country. Deceitfulness of riches. We got to get the bag. We got to get the bag. And desires for other things. Enter in and choke the word, and it proves unfruitful. Right? This is where I think you can apply it to the modern era. This is where, for me, I would apply it there. I think 100%, bro. I think people are theological. I think people are that, bro. And I think that's that. Faith Fire shows up for 3. Faith Fire for 3. I don't think Marxism equals wokeism. Marx did say that communism was diametrically opposed to religion. Marxism is also opposed to the nuclear family and says it's a social construct. But woke, right, does not automatically mean Marxist. I would agree with that. But in our era, though, what woke does mean for most people is leftist agenda, which includes the sexist, political, all of it, everything the conservatives are against. That's what it means now. And in its original intention, woke was a warning to black people to be careful because there were laws that would harm black people. So it was like, stay awake, be awoke. That's what it meant back then. But now it means everything that we conservatives are against, the leftist agenda. So if you bring up racism because it's lumped in with being woke, then you're woke because you see racial concerns. Or if you bring up exploitation, oppress, as if that's uniquely Karl Marx. And that's why I love Voddie Baucham's book, because he said in the tagline how sexual activists hijacked the civil rights movement. He's separating the two, and conservatives are going to eat this book up. They're loving it. But I hope they understand that he just separated the two. So whenever you call someone woke, when they bring up a racial issue and you're attributing to them a love for or also an allegiance to the sexual acronym movement, all that stuff, when you do that, you are imitating the sexual activists that hijacked the civil rights movement. Because most black people that I know, and that were back then, they were talking about this stuff, did not agree with the sexual acronym lifestyle. But you threw it all in to dissuade anyone from bringing this stuff up because you lumped it in. Just like the way the thorns grow in with the seed, you tied it all together. And Voddie's book, ironically, is separating it, even though he's one of the people who I think people would look to as having helped establish that reality. So I just think it's fascinating, man. But what do I know? You can unsubscribe because I'm spreading lies. Man, I should pray for that dude right now. Lord, have mercy on that brother. He doesn't know me, doesn't know my heart. But I pray that you would be with him. He's probably a dude who loves you and wants to honor you, but I think he's theoretical. And I don't know him, Lord, but I just pray that you would save him. If he's not saved, then you would help him to grow. And Lord, humble him. If he is judging people, help him to be humble, Lord. We're all just trying to honor the Lord here. Just because you disagree with what I said doesn't mean I'm lying or sinning. We're just trying to honor you, Lord, and we do it in many ways. So I just pray that you would bless that brother Jason and be with him for your glory and his good. In your name we pray, amen. And that's just it for me. I'm not worried about it. This is my last comment because thank you. This is about 100 plus people watching. I appreciate you, man. Thank you. It says, Pastor Kerr, you are shocking to everybody. Oh, I'm sorry. I got told I was promoting Marxism during BLM movement. So I had to dig deep to figure out what that even meant and how. Now I understand. It's hard to know how to navigate it all, but I'm still learning. Well said, Faith Fire. I would agree with you. I would agree. I think for a lot of us, I didn't even, when they first used to say you're a Marxist, you know what I thought they were talking about? I honestly, some of you might not be old enough to know this or know it, but some of you do. So back in the day, there was this black and white silent films called The Three Stooges, right? Well, they weren't silent. The Three Stooges weren't. It was like, hey, Mo. They would just be doing. But there also were these three guys called the Marx Brothers. And I think they were imitating Karl Marx, I guess. But they were kind of like the Three Stooges. I think they were silent films. But they would do all these quirky things. I thought when people were saying you're a Marxist, they were calling me one of them. I was like, what are you talking about? Why are they calling me one of the Marx Brothers? That's what I thought they were talking about. I kid you not. And then I found out, I had to look up and figure out what it was. It's really fascinating. It's really crazy. Pastor Kerr, you are shocking to everybody, sir, and it take courage to just stand. Woke does mean everything conservatives are against, which is going to create constrictions for conservatism. Squeak, thank you. I appreciate you, brother. I've been told I'm shocking to a lot of people. Oh, man, I love it. I'm not shocking to my kids. Yep, there you go, Faith Fire. That's it. Groucho Harpo on them. Yep, that's it. So, man, I love doing this with y'all. I love talking about this stuff. Thank you. Hey, listen, go get Voddie's book, man. I think from what he said in the interviews, I'm with it because I did that. Go get this book. It's everywhere. Get it, like it. Let it get you, put you hip, eat the meat, spell out the bones, right? Don't forget, I will be posting the Gays Do New Black video probably tonight. So if you follow the channel, you'll get a notification. Check out, I would love for thousands of people to watch it. I was talking about this stuff a while ago. So the video was crazy. Me and my man had fun with it. It was Gays and New Black. I talk about a lot of the stuff that this dude's talking about right now. So grateful for you. Thank y'all for watching, man. There was a lot of people in the stream. This is now my longest stream today. See what y'all make me do. See what y'all do. Thank you for the super chats. Appreciate y'all. Like and subscribe to the channel. I will see y'all tomorrow with something crazy. All right? Grace and peace.